Alrighty, welcome back for another episode of Mario RPG. And we are getting close to the end, folks. If I'm not mistaken, it's 14 episodes, so we were four away from completing this epic journey as on the remastered version of it all. We are here in Monster Town. If you're just joining us, we've made our way here. We just got here at the end of the last episode. And I don't know if that be pronounced Jaeger or Jagger or Jager. Because you know the J in German is Jaeger, like Jägermeister, Jägerbomb, or Jaeger. Actually, in Jaeger, Jaeger meaning hunter. As was popularized, at least in my world, by the movie. What was that movie? Pacific Rim. Well, regardless, he's getting his butt kicked happily by our motley trio and Mallow. Nice little pokey poke there. Dang, he hits hard. I mean, he's pretty tough. He's got the whole, he's armored. As a turtle, he's like one of nature's most naturally armored creatures. Well, not really. I guess armadillos are a little more armored. The turtle shell isn't really so much of a armor. I mean, it is protective, obviously, but it doesn't seem like it's a little saucy little whatever the crap he is. Bean sprout, apparently, with a cape. Caped Baldy, I might call him, except for he's got the little flippy thing there. It'd be one punch! Sorry, I'm a little off my game. It's a Sunday. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, well, evening. I'm just now kicking my brain into gear, so I apologize for that. Whoa. I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing other than just adjusting my active party. I'm not sure what the impetus was for this. Again, for anybody who's just joining us, this has been done. This was actually recorded ages ago. It probably was right around the time that RPG came out. It might have been 2 or 3 weeks after it came out that I did this. So this playthrough is about as foreign to me as it is to you. The idea behind this whole thing, as I've said before, is to have dynamite gameplay, or sufficient gameplay. And you know what I didn't check? Hang on a second. Okay, I don't think there is. Yeah, alright. Hopefully there's not. Anyway, the idea, dynamic gameplay and then dynamite commentary. Unfortunately, because I'm not a great gamer, the content is only going to be but so awesome. Jeez. I do like our character's reaction, the animation they do when he's kicking our butt. I mean, it makes it look so... I mean, it's really amazing. When I was going through theater, they said 50% of acting is reacting, and I think that's... Well, I know that's absolutely true when it comes to fight scenes or physical violence. The slap is only so hard. You can slap somebody as hard as you can, and I mean, unless you're amazing at it, you've got some kind of aptitude in it. You slap them. If they just do this, no matter how hard it was, it's not going to sell it. But on the contrary, you can slap somebody as long as it's fast enough. It doesn't necessarily have to be hard. Like you kind of hold back at the last second. As long as the person sells it, does the whole head spin thing and twirls around, it makes the slap look awesome. A lot of what makes something look good is how it's reacted to. So this little turd muffin's power, this little bean sprout power, is really magnified or is really manifested through how they have our characters react and it's pretty vicious. Usually when they take a hit, they just kind of they do a little back. You know, you can see they recoil a little bit, or they put their defense up, whatever it is. But he's doing stuff where they're just their heads get knocked around, they're doubling over. So they did a lot of really good animation there to sell just how powerful this guy is. Otherwise, it would just be like boom, 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 and you're like, okay, so you're doing 80 points of damage. That's impressive, but it doesn't translate. It's kind of the same thing when, what I think I would imagine one of the challenges when you're doing like CG animation and you have something where a creature or even a person has to lift up something that is not actually there, whether it's an actual person or whether it's a CG character, and to be able to portray or communicate that weapon's weight, I think could be a very difficult thing to do, because it's not something that is naturally in there, and we can tell when there's weight to things. That's one of the difficulties with doing like miniatures when it comes to like water or other things. Water, it's very weird. Water's a fluid. It should always look the same no matter how big or small, but you can usually tell, or there's something a little awry if the water's coming in against like a model. And a lot of it has to do with just the speed. The bigger something is, the slower it seems to move. It doesn't mean it's moving slower, but it seems to move slower. And I don't know what the physics are behind that, but I mean, that's, you see that's one of the ways that you get scale, if like, to know that it's a giant and not just a regular person moving in a small city. You see the giant, it seems to move a lot, a little bit slower. It should still be pretty fast, otherwise it's kind of boring if it's supposed to be generating conflict or tension. But that slowed movement is what gives it the sense of scale. Whereas if you were just shooting, if it was me and I was like walking around a train, a model train set, I'd be moving at normal speed, and it makes the train, it dwarfs the train. It doesn't make me look super big. It just makes the train look small. Whereas if I was moving slowly and the camera's down amongst the train set and it's positioned in such a way that you don't notice that there's no people and you really can't see the seams maybe on certain plastic pieces or whatever. And I'm sure there's people that make their own stuff and you can't see those seams either. They are painstakingly removed. But in that case, then you might get the idea that it's a giant person. Aside from the fact, of course, that people that would dwarf his city don't exist. That was the one thing I was having a hard time with when the Incredible Hulk first came out. The original one with Eric Bana, I believe was the actor's name, like the first real like CG Hulk. And yes, he was very bright green. I think the coloring and skin texture had something to do with it. But a lot of people are like, oh, he looks so fake. And at the time, I'm wondering, well, how real can he look when in our brains we know for a fact he's not. That doesn't exist. It can't exist. Like Lou Ferrigno. Well, I mean, there are bodybuilders, I guess, bigger, but that's about as realistically large as you can expect. You can expect maybe some more muscle definition or maybe a little more height, but you're not going to get larger than like, Hulk being 8 feet tall or something, or 7 foot something. I think it's somewhere between 7 and 9 feet, and maybe that changes with whoever's writing him or what have you. I don't know, but it was just one of those things where I wouldn't argue it, but I'm just kind of wondering. I was wondering, okay, how realistic can we make it? Because our minds are always going to be telling us this isn't real. But I do remember, well, ironically, I remember the movie. I don't remember the name of the movie. I think it was another Peter Jackson movie, as I recall. Had prawns in it. It wasn't Area 51, but it was something like that. Project 9 or Project 5, I don't know. Had numbers in it. And it was humanoid. It was like human. If you were to cross a prawn with a human, you would get these creatures. And I remember going, okay, my brain is telling me they're not real. And because of their proportions, like how narrow the waist is, broad the shoulders are, general physics, it's like that's not a human being. You can't put a human being in that suit. And the suit is way too organic looking. It looks too fleshy to be like your foam and stuff that's usually used. Not to say that there aren't craftsmen who can really make it look very convincing, but in general, that I think that's you can kind of tell, especially depending on how a certain character moves you know, how they shift their weight, or you know, they'll move it a certain way. It's like if that was actually as solid as we're supposed to believe it is, it would cut into them, or it would peel away from the body a little bit, or be pushed away, where instead of conforming to their body as they move. But I just remember watching that, and that was the first time that I don't know why, but it was like the first time that I was like, you know what, I'm able to believe, like I'm really having to remind my brain that these can't be real, that this has to be CG, mocap, whatever, however it was done. I didn't even look. And that's what made me believe that, yeah, we could get to a version of Hulk that looks as real as, you know, where we're like, okay, maybe, you know, maybe there is, because, you know, there's who was the guy, I can't remember his name now, and I feel bad. Well, I don't feel bad. He's an actor. He knows he had this look. He was the freaky bad guy in The Rocketeer. Had a very long face, and I don't remember now, because I looked it up at one point, and I'm not going to look it up now because I'd take away from the focus of this game. But I remember looking up, and I can't remember if they used prosthetics on him or not, but I got the feeling they didn't. He was just a very big guy with some disproportionate facial features, and I think even hands. But just a huge, like, monster of a guy, and you look at him and go, there's no way that's a... Like, again, I just looked as like there has to be makeup on him, but I'm pretty sure it was minimal. That example to say that there are people in the world, and you know, if you go to, like, you know, a circus or something like that, you can find people who you go, wow, there's really... I just was watching a Guinness Book of World Records video. I'm doing editing for them now. Well, not for Guinness Book, but for a company that puts some of their stuff up in restaurants and things. And so I'm doing an edit, and the world's smallest woman, she just turned 30, I think, in the past couple of years. She's from India, out of India. She's 2 feet tall. She's not I don't know what the politically correct term is. Little person, midget, dwarf, however you want to, whatever the currents, you know, it'll change in a year, if not sooner, what the appropriate way to say it is. But you know what I'm talking about. Somebody like Warwick Davis, who played Willow. We'll pretend he didn't play Willow anywhere else except for the movie back in the 80s. But somebody like that, she's not like that. She's like a miniature person. Like, doesn't have a lot of telltale signs. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't look like just like 100% like a miniature person. There is some development. I mean, she has kind of like, you know, like her arms and everything. She kind of looks more like a baby than anything, but she doesn't. I don't think she's not classified as what Warwick Davis would be classified as. It's not the same type thing, because there's I wouldn't call it a condition. It's a developmental condition or manifestation, I guess. It's just it's another way of being, a different way of being. I don't know how to put it, but anyway. But she's actually just a very small, teeny tiny woman. Like, I think she's wearing the smallest shoes that you can find, like for a baby, whatever. They're still too big for her. But yeah, she's 24 inches, so 2 feet tall. I mean, she looks like a baby, but she is. But when you see her face, you can see, you know, you can see wisdom or whatever. She's definitely a you know, fully grown, developed woman. I mean, I think she lives with her parents, because it just, you know, that's one of those things where it's like, okay, like how do you make a living when you're that size? Like, what? Because even something like keyboard, like typing, when your hands are, I mean, just think of like a 1-year-old or maybe 2-year-old baby, or, you know, child, and how big their hands are, and that's what you have to work with. Like that makes using a mouse. I mean, now there was a shot of her like holding a phone, and she's like scrolling through the phone, so she can obviously do that kind of thing. But like, even just like a work from home, and, you know, just do data entry or something, it just makes, like, what? I feel like it's so small. She's so small that there just has to be a huge amount of difficulty in her being able to make a living, to do very much at all. I'm hoping that her parents are well enough off they can kind of support her in that. And who knows, maybe she did. I mean, obviously they don't tell you that in the videos. They don't it's just like about 15 to 30 second spot of just seeing her interacting. And this one was, I think, celebrating her 30th birthday, which was really cool. But I think there's like a shot of her standing next to one of those, the clear water jugs that you use like at the water cooler. She's standing next to one of those, and I'm trying to remember if she's slightly taller. I think she's slightly taller than that. But anyway, all of that to say, the world is full of wonderful things. Wonderful, and I hate to use this word because it has been co-opted to mean something just absolutely mundane and stupid, but genuine diversity. Like, there's genuine diversity and wonders and marvels and things that honestly you'd consider to be very bizarre, and you wouldn't believe it if somebody told you, but then when you see it, you go, oh, okay. Like, I watched the longest throw of a hot dog into a bun, and it was like 167 feet or something. It was ridiculous. It was like the guy just hauled back and threw it like John Elway chucking a football, and the guy at the other end was able to track on it and catch it, and just in a bun, hot dog in a bun. I mean, there was ridiculous stuff like that. Now, I mean, that's what do you call it, talent, or like, I don't know what you call that. Not determination, but like, yeah, just tenacity. Like, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna set this record. But, some things just like, again, the smallest person, the tallest man. And fortunately, the only footage I got of that to edit was pretty much stopped at the neck. So it was almost like, those cartoons where the adult is just out of frame. You never really see the face. And it showed a young lady standing next to him. And that's the other problem, too, because it's not like she was particularly tall herself. I mean, it looked like he would have been about two of her standing on top of each other, but I don't know if she's... I mean, I went on a couple dates with a gal who was 4'11". And if this girl was 4'11", I mean, he looks like he's twice as tall, but that's still only like 8 feet, 9 feet tall, which is very, very tall. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like if he was standing next to like a popular celebrity or something, like a basketball player, like Michael Jordan, who's 6'6", I believe. And you go, wow, that guy's like, when you see, you don't necessarily appreciate how tall Shaq is until you get like Kobe, who I think he was also 6'6", 6'5", somewhere around there, and you're like, wow. You see him next to a quote unquote normal person like myself, and you're like, whoa, he's pretty tall. He's got 4 or 5 inches on me. And then he stands next to Shaq, and you're like, oh my gosh, that guy must be huge. I haven't stood next to either one of them. R.I.P. Kobe, of course, but I remember thinking the same. Patrick Mahomes, I had no idea. For those of you watching who aren't familiar, he's a quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he is... quarterbacks in general, your prototypical quarterbacks, generally you want them to be like over 6'2" at least. 6'3", 6'4" is your kind of your average, and then you get 6'6" to 6'8" somewhere sometimes. But the idea is you want them to be able to see over their line, their linemen, who usually the linemen are pretty big guys. And you want them to be able to get the ball over, like if a defender puts his hand up in the air, like you want the most height you can get. Usually, though, that comes at the cost of agility. A lot of your quarterbacks kind of look like they're moving through molasses. They can get into the pocket, they stay there, and throw the ball. Pocket passers, what they call them. And that's, I would say, over time, it has been proven largely that those are the most successful. They have the longest careers. Because running quarterbacks who are maybe a little bit shorter, maybe about the same height, but typically the ones that are a little bit shorter, the ones that run, they get banged up a lot. I mean, you got the defenses trying to lay them out, especially if they're good, if they're actually making a difference in the game. They're not just like, oh, it's an average quarterback doing better, but they're a superstar or somebody who's really killing the defense with their passing. If they run outside the pocket, the defense is going to try to put a hurting on them, right or wrong. That's how it goes, and just in general, if you're taller, and typically quarterbacks are leaner as well, you're going to take a beating from defense who is much bigger. But anyway, so they're typically tall. So I should have assumed that Mahomes was a tall fellow, but first of all, I always saw him running, and he seemed to be running really quick. And remember how I told you about size scales. You see Ben Roethlisberger run, he looks slow, and that's no slight on Ben. He looks slow because he's like 6'6", 6'7". But then if I was actually on the field with him, he would be moving just fine. He actually moves at a good clip. It's just it looks slower because of how he runs, because of his body size. And so but I saw Patrick Mahomes, and I'm like, he looks super quick, and I've seen him. And when I've seen him standing, when I see him, typically he's around his lineman or his tight end, who are taller than him, by several inches. And so I thought the guy was like, one of the shorter quarterbacks, like 5'10", 5'11". I think he's 6'4". I think he's got 2 inches on me easily. And it's so weird. But it's my point and all that being to scale. So, if you see him, next to linemen who are 6'8", 6'9", or whatever, yeah, he's going to look a little bit short. He's going to look a little smaller. And they're also bigger, thicker, wider, brah. And so, yeah, anybody you stack up next to one of those fellows is going to look terribly small. Oh, this is not going well for our hero, is it? No, it is definitely not. Don't give up. I can't give up. I'm pretty sure I need to do this in order to go in the game. I think this is a particular unfair thing. I think platforming with isometric views like this is kind of it's more... It's not the fun kind of skill. It's the okay, just kind of memorize how to go. It's not. Yeah, I prefer. I've said this when I was playing Castlevania. I prefer to have like pinpoint controls and execution, and be able to see distance clearly, and have just the obstacles or the nature of the leveling be difficult, like Donkey Kong Country, I think, is a good example. Or not Donkey Kong Country, I'm sorry. Donkey Kong Country is fun, but it's pretty darn easy, even for me. But like Donkey Kong Country Returns or Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, those are, the controls are very tight. The game is a lot of fun, but it is very difficult but the levels are very difficult. You've got to do precision platforming in a lot of areas. And I'm really excited, honestly, that they've got Donkey Kong Country Returns coming to the Switch. I think it's going to be in the first quarter of 2025. Because I have it for the Wii, but I hate playing. I don't like the motion control. Never liked the motion control. And one of the big problems with Wii, at least in my opinion, is if you don't want to use the motion controls, there are some games, like Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, where you can get an arcade stick and you can play it with that. But like Punch-Out on the Wii, you have to use that stupid little, like, you turn the controller sideways. It's like, the controller's not meant, to me, that's like, it's supposed to be like an auxiliary. It's an ancillary thing. It shouldn't have to be the way you mainly play. They want you to play with the motion controls, but if you don't want to play with the motion controls, that's what you're stuck with, and it's just not a great controller to play with. The buttons are tiny, it's turned sideways, it feels like a gimmick. So I'm just glad that for now, we're actually going to get a version of Donkey Kong Country Returns that can be played on a regular controller. You don't have to shake it or do anything like that, and that's when I plan to make my playthrough of that game. But anyway, getting back here. So, but that game is one that requires precision platforming and can be very challenging to go through. And yes, some of it's a little cheap where you progress and then you're like, okay, I don't know what to do here. Or it's like, okay, I'm standing on this thing. Okay, now all of a sudden the platform drops. Well, the only way you would know that is by standing on the platform. So there are a few cheap things like that, but they give you enough lives so that that's not really a problem. You're only going to start running out of lives if you don't adapt fast enough. If you jump to the next platform and expect it to stay standing and it drops out, it's like, okay, no, we've given you the idea. These platforms look like this. They're going to shake and fall very quickly. So you just know that. You should put that in your memory and make use of it. So yeah, so I'm just saying, like, I mean, it's a Mario game, so I understand the desire to want to put that in here, but it's an RPG, and RPGs aren't known, at least the ones that I'm playing. I'm playing Final Fantasy now, and the original, and there's no platforming in RPGs. Now, we've already established there's some stuff in Mario RPG that doesn't exist in a lot of RPGs, or at least earlier ones, like the ability to try to time a defense, where as long as attack is not something you can't defend against, if you get the timing done right, you hit the defense button and you protect yourself from most, if not all, damage. And also, if you time your attacks better, you can get more oomph out of them. Whereas most RPGs, it's, hey, you attack, and the damage is done based on RNG, and and whatever the maths that go on and the calculations that go on behind the scenes. So I just find it kind of a peculiar thing. Whereas something like Superstar Saga, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, that's kind of an action RPG. And I guess maybe that's what this is. And so but there's not a lot. It doesn't lean into that heavily. You just have times like that. And there's going to be another time in here. I skipped forward. I was trying to get the runtime on this. And there's going to be a place coming up where we are trying to climb a beanstalk, and it's precision jumping in isometric view. And it's like, what the heck is this? This is absolutely mind-numbingly frustrating. Give me the challenge, but don't let the challenge be tied to crappy controls. And that was a problem I had. A lot of the problem I had with Castlevania was it wasn't, I would say, it was like 50-50. I feel like half of the difficulty of that game is, oh no, we're going to say 40-60. 40% of the game, difficulty of the game is in, I guess you call it the level design or how the bad guys interact, the knockback, learning the boss patterns, being able to maintain, keep weapons, your holy water and stuff throughout the levels. And 60% of it is made difficult because of how Simon controls. Trying to go up and down the stairs can be a pain in the butt. When you jump, you have absolutely no mobility in the air. And hey, that's very realistic. I can't deny that. But platformers as I know them have never been about realism. And there's plenty of other things about Castlevania that is not realistic. The physics that are not realistic. So it's not like we tried to make the most realistic game, and so we had to make the character control a certain way. This is just the way we did it. I'm not sure if it was done purposely to spike the difficulty, because it's not a very long game. Mario, if you don't use the warps, Mario 1 I think is a longer game. It's not as hard, but like the mileage, if you were to put all the screens of Castlevania together back to back to back, and you were to put the platforms of Mario back to back to back, I'm pretty sure Mario sans warps would be like 3 times longer, if not more so. Now again, different style games. One's just a platformer, one's a... I mean, like Mario's about the agility. It's about acrobatics. It's about the timing the jumps. Castlevania has jumps, but it's not about getting those jumps right. It's more about... I would say it's more about pattern recognition, and to a small degree it is, but if you've played it, the characters do not behave the same way each time. You play Mario, every time you go through a certain part of the level, you know where the Goomba's going to be. You know when, how to manipulate the piranha plants coming out of the pipes. You know where the Koopas are going to be. You could, I'm pretty sure there's people who played through most, if not all, of Mario blindfolded. You can only do that because you know exactly what to expect. The game says, hey, here I am. Here's my level. Here are my villains, your enemies, your obstacles. Learn how to defeat them, and you can beat me every time. And I think that's fine. And I think it's great for a game to be like that, because then it's a game you can challenge yourself to beat it, and then maybe the next 2 or 3 times you beat it, it's still going to be a challenge, because you have that breakthrough. You have that day where you're just on fire and you get it done, and then you go back to play it again and you still struggle. But then you keep going and going and going, and eventually you get good enough where you can just kind of play it as fun. I honestly thought I had achieved that and I had for years. I probably, when did I first beat Super Punch-Out for the Super Nintendo? I was at my friend Christian's house. Well, he let me borrow the game. So it was back before, so I had the Super Nintendo. So it's probably when I was like 11 or 12. So we're talking between 92 and 94, I'll say. I mastered, to an extent, Punch-Out, Super Punch-Out, where I got to the point where around that time I beat it with only getting hit once, because I couldn't. I never got the timing for one of, I think it was Rick Bruiser, actually, not Nick. Rick Bruiser. There was one like combo that he had, and I never got the timing right, or never figured out, wait, am I supposed to dodge or duck there? So I usually take 1 or 2 hits from him. I had a game where I just took a run where I got tagged once, and that was it. So I was at the pinnacle. I had reached the pinnacle of that. Now I wasn't doing it super fast. These people that beat every guy in like 9 seconds. That wasn't me. I didn't have record times. Most of them were longer fights. So there were a few exceptions. Some guys that I could knock down in 9 to 10 seconds, TKO. But most of them I was playing the long way. I just had gotten good. I'd memorized their patterns and I was responding accordingly. So from 1994 until 2004, 2024, I reigned supreme in my own world, like again, not in relation to other people who are good at it, but in terms of me playing the game, I always beat the game, and with 0 losses. And it was like a week and a half ago, I just gotten massacred. In fact, you know what? After this, I might actually pull that up on the Super Nintendo and actually play it again. But I'd had a bad day with Elder Scrolls Legends. I'd gotten crushed on the ladder and hadn't made any progress. In fact, I think I finished 2 places lower than I had, and I'd started that day. So it wasn't feeling really great. And then I played Castlevania, or Final Fight, or it was some Streets of Rage, something, one of those games, beat 'em ups, and I got beat there too. I think it was Moonrider. What was the one after Moonrider? I think it was Moonrider. And this is the place I'm talking about. This is another one of the. Well, no, I can't remember. So you're gonna watch me miss this jump a bazillion times, but there's a secret to it, and I think it was learning that secret. It's like where you need to jump, or what you're supposed to do. I'm trying to make a certain jump for most of this that you're not gonna make it. You have to do something a little bit different. Anyway, you will see it. You will see it fall pat as I told you. Yonder it comes. But yeah, I was playing, and I lost to Macho Man, for crying out loud. Twice, I believe. No. Heikikigero. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I lost him. Now, granted, the first time I tried to play, I was doing it with an arcade stick. And the big problem was, on a Super Nintendo controller, Y is left punch, and B is right punch. And a lot of the time, it doesn't really matter. You're just going left and right. But there's some characters where, in order to catch them, like they do a super move, and in order to counter, you have to hit them from a certain direction. And if you swing at the direction that they swung at you from, you're gonna whiff. And not only does that mean that you miss an attack of opportunity, but a lot of times it puts you out of position and they can counter back. And unfortunately, without being able to remap the controls, the arcade stick, those were inverted, or are more or less inverted. I think the Y and the B button were no longer. Yeah, instead of it being like Y here, B here, it was this. Y here, B here. So I'm hitting the furthest left button, thinking I'm punching with my left hand, and in fact I was punching with my right. And we got all the way to Heikikigero doing that, and then I just got screwed. I got screwed by the controls and got my butt kicked. So like, okay, I'm gonna use the Pro controller and I'll set things right. And then I lose to freaking Macho Man. And it's like the first time that and you can't, if for those of you who don't know, there's 3 classes or 3 classes. In terms of, okay, you have like 4 boxers in one class, you beat those, you go to the next class, you get the belt, you go to the next one, and you get it. And the only way to unlock the 4th class, which is like the special class, is to flawlessly beat all the other ones. If you lose one match, you're not able to go into that hallowed special class and actually beat the game. So by losing to Macho Man, it just ruined my run, and that was infuriating. Well, not infuriating, but it was just demoralizing because I haven't lost in that game in like 3 decades. So I think perhaps, I do this, and then I do Borderlands 2 in preparation for the week because I'm streaming now, so there's not as much free time, in a manner of speaking. I create free time, but I want to keep the stream part going on. So usually I would do that next. I might take a quick break just to redeem myself and beat Super Punch-Out again. I've already beat it once on the channel. Now I'm a Push Buttons. It was one of the first games I did. But now I'm doing it as an underdog instead of doing it just as a. But my point was, there are games that you can play where you want there to be certainty. You want it to be the same thing each time because you want to be able to go back to it and just kind of relax, vibe, and just enjoy the fun part of it. Like Punch Out was that for me. Mega Man X also. Although Mega Man X, I tried to play that later and also got screwed there. I think I was just in a bad headspace that day. But you just want one of those kind of games. Yeah, this was just, I remember, just mind-numbing. And the scariest thing, folks, one of the scariest things that can happen to you in this day and age is for you to hit a problem with a product or a video game. You go on Google and you look up you type out your problem and nothing shows up. There's no Reddit, there's no random stuff, there's no blog, nothing acknowledges that this is a problem. That's a terrifying thing. That means you have no, see, we got it there. So that was like, okay. But I'm pretty sure that's still not what we were supposed to do. I mean, it's very difficult, folks. It's very difficult. This is because, as you can see, I'm trying to judge the distance, the space. But I'm thinking, if I'm remembering correctly, we don't have to make that jump. There's a hidden block. I think that's what it is. I think there's a hidden block on the yellow, above the yellow thing. If we jump straight up, I think we hit a block. But anyway, yeah, this was just... So I remember I put in, like, what the heck is with the twisty, multicolored things in Mario RPG, the jump? And there was nothing. Like, I mean, if I wanted... I mean, there was, like, Mario RPG playthroughs, but there was nobody else going in there and saying, am I the only person who's crazy for thinking this? Oh, it was so infuriating. Like, I actually got on yesterday... And there was a song, it wasn't by the Beach Boys, it was a cover by the Beach Boys. The original song, I think, was back from the 1800s or something in Nassau. I think that's how you pronounce it, Nassau. But it's called Sloop John B. And see, got it, just barely. So that's why like I said, I'm pretty sure there's a hidden block that we need to hit. But because I was able to grab onto the very bottom of it, I kept thinking that's what we needed to do, and that's why I keep trying to do it. But when I did the search, nothing came up. And so that was like, in today's day and age, there was a time, when the internet was young, and we were all naive and blissfully ignorant, or however you want to think of it. There was a time where there was a lot you couldn't find on the internet. It was actually very rare to find what you were looking for on the internet. But those days are long past, and now we're at a point where if you don't find something on the internet, you may have messed up really bad, or you may be very special in terms of what you're struggling with, because nobody else has ever had this problem. It's a scary thing. But yeah, I got on there yesterday, Sloop John B. Now, when I heard it on the radio when I was a kid, my dad would listen to like the oldies when we were in his Toyota Corolla. He got himself a brand new tape deck because the Corolla didn't go. It was a 1983 Toyota Corolla hatchback. Originally yellow, he got it painted black, and he put a little stereo in there. It wasn't the best. He changed out the speakers. He did a pretty good thing. But there were no subs back then, and if there were, he didn't mess with that. He just got a basic system. It had like a little bit of EQ on there. Anyway, I remember listening to that, and I remember hearing that song on the radio. Yeah, that's me trying everything. And the only part I remember is the chorus, which in my mind at the time was, I'm sick and tired and I want to go home. But the way it was sung, for lack of a better, it wasn't sad, but it was somber. It was, in the song is actually about, as best as I can tell, a very, not horrific, but just a really bummer of a ship voyage. Sloop John B. It's about being on a ship. I think it's based in reality. I think there is actually a ship that used to sail around or whatever at that point. But, just a bunch of crazy stuff happens. Drunk fights. The pig, there's a pig on the ship, I believe, that eats the corn. And I don't know. It's something where, like, lyrically, it's kind of like a shanty where it's like, it's not supposed to be lyrically profound, but it's just pretty much a voyage on an older ship that does not go well. And the person's just kind of, I'm all broke up and I want to go home. And so the actual context of the song is a little more sprightly, but that chorus got me because, again, that's all I heard. That's all I could remember from my younger days. So in my mind, I'm thinking this is a very sad song about somebody who is just absolutely miserable in life and wants to go home. And obviously there's different ways you can interpret that idea. Like there is an idea of, like, whatever religion you happen to believe in, there is the idea that, you know, we come from somewhere, that our spirits come from somewhere, a home, if you will, and then we come down and, you know, we do our stuff here on the earth, or even just, like, there's that song, I'm Coming Home, and I remember that was played in conjunction with like a Paul Walker montage, and it was, I was like, oh my gosh, I did it, no, oh gosh. You cannot, there's no way to convey the emotion here of what I'm feeling at this particular point in the game. I am so exhausted / livid. It's a rough combo. But anyway, so for the longest time, but the idea of, you know, I'm coming home can literally mean you want to go home to your house, your actually earthly abode, and then the other one's just like, I just want to go home. Like I want to be done. The idea is, I guess, maybe not even, it's not thinking necessarily like heaven. The idea is I want to go somewhere where I can lay down and not get up. Like, and not in a finality way, not in a suicidal way. It's just like, I'm just done. You know, whatever this is, whatever the circumstances, whatever life is, it has kicked the crap out of me, and I just don't have anything left. And that's a sad place to be, because, you know, just despite what even somebody like myself may think at times, you know, life is a blessing. There are plenty of people. I would have had a sister, Crystal, who passed away in childbirth. Like she would have been healthy, but there were complications with that, and she passed away. And a lot of folks have those kind of stories. We know a lot of people like that. And then you have people that also die young, like they're born and they live, you know, even sometimes 30 years or so. Just really where you're kind of hitting your stride in life, and then some tragedy happens and they pass away. There was a gal that went to a church I was at, and her father he was pink of health. You know, he was like a fireman or something, and he had a brain aneurysm while he was lifting weights, just out of nowhere. So anyway, that's to say that the tragedy is there for all of us, or can be. And so when you think about that, you're like, wow, I'm actually, like, if you're watching this, we are very fortunate. We're alive, where we have a chance, a stab at this life, which a lot of people don't get, or they get a much abbreviated version of it. And it makes it tragic. That's why I think suicide, if you can get past the stigma of it, or, you know, whether or not, is this a mortal sin or whatever, you just think about. Now, granted, I would argue that people who commit suicide, there has to be something that's broken in the mind, because even in my most depressed or fatigued or beleaguered state, the best I could say was, I just want to go to sleep and not wake up. So there I go. I found the hidden block. There it was, by accident. And I think right now I'm like, are you kidding me, game? Are you freaking kidding me? How did I not hit that? Yeah, so we did all of that, and it was that easy. So I am both elated and absolutely flabbergasted at this particular point, just so as you know. I mean, not me, literally, but me back then, yeah, very, 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 like, okay, thank goodness, but also, what the hell? But yeah, even in my worst, that, like, the even if it's something simple, well, relatively simple, and I'm not going to list stuff here because I'm not trying to encourage it or get people to think about it, but, you know, there are, you know, jumping off of a building or a mountain or a bridge or something is like, no, like, that's absolutely not, can't do that. I mean, that I think you really have to have, yeah, just have to really be pushed beyond, but it's that kind of thing. You're like, okay, a human being, like, there are much easier ways, much less painful or terrifying ways to end things. The fact that people do that, again, there's something has to snap. I don't think you can be of sound mind and do that. And that's not, I'm not calling people like that crazy, or, again, it's not insanity, but there's something that has to not be right where you can actively take the action. It's one thing to say, you know what, I just want to lay here and I don't care what happens. It's kind of a defeated, like, okay, just letting it go on autopilot. But to actively do something that would end your life, that requires something to be broken. So, and I guess in tandem with that idea or that concept is, if you are that broken, then it's not necessarily just grief or weariness that brings you to that. There's something else in play. Whereas if you were just absolutely depressed, but I mean, I guess it would include up to and including, self-deletion. That, however it is you're in that, you're so weary of life. Life has done so much, whether it's perceived or real, because they're both can be true. You can have somebody who, born in, they're born, they have, some kind of horrible, affliction in their youth that makes the survival itself difficult, or makes their young, it's a source of derision when they're in school, and their loved ones pass away, or some tragedy happens, and it's like, it just seems like there are some people who they just go through life and things happen in their life that are just seem cruel, and it's perpetual. And you got things like that. And you got some people that create their own problems. You got some people that just, for whatever reason, they make decisions that kind of continue to set themselves up for failure or disaster. And it's still tragic, but at the same time, it's self-inflicted. But regardless of how you get there, you get to a place where you're just weary of life. It's a sad thing, because it should be something that we're excited about. And the thing is, it can always change, and that's something I always remind myself of. Okay, right now, today feels like I'm not this day, but you could say, what, today felt like a crappy day. Today's a day that just wasn't even worth getting out of bed for. But as quickly and as easily as disappointment has beset me on this day, the next day could be garnished with amazing things, or a meeting with someone that turns things around. I remember back when I was pursuing acting, such that I have to remind myself, before Brad Pitt was Brad Pitt, he was just Brad Pitt. Like, he would go to an audition just like anybody else. And he didn't show up to his first audition and they go, "Oh my gosh, you're Brad Pitt. Like, you've got the look, guy. You're it. You're going to be a star." Like, he went to auditions that he didn't get parts for. I'm sure every actor has, they can say, yeah, I had like 25 auditions or 50 auditions or 100, 200 auditions before I got this particular role, and that was my breakout role. Like Clint Eastwood, and I think he was told, just don't even bother, man. But he had a bunch of small itty bitty roles, stuff he didn't get anything, and then he got some small stuff, and then boom, there's a turning point. Whatever that is, whether it's well earned, whether it's favoritism, however it happens, there's that day where it's like, oh, now you've arrived. Ta-da! This is, and it can be that way in other area, aspects of life. I think acting is more, or the entertainment industry is far more feels more like a lottery than some other jobs. I mean, you have bad actors, but for the most part, I'd say that for every role that gets cast, obviously for us, like for me, Michael J. Fox, there could have been no other Marty McFly. Like, he was it. But in an alternate universe, there could have been another actor who would have been fine. And it's impossible to get my head in that space, or for us, I would argue for all of us to get our heads in that space where we could see somebody better doing it, or somebody doing it better. Like, for example, somebody informed me, I don't know if this is true, I assume it was, Mark Hamill apparently was the first to play Amadeus, the titular role of Amadeus in the Broadway production. And that was before his Star Wars days. But then he wasn't picked up to play in the movie. It was Tom H. I can't remember the last name. But I saw Amadeus in, I think, 9th grade, 10th grade. I loved it. It was great. And that guy, like, with his laugh and just the mannerisms and everything, he was Amadeus. And as much as at the time anyway that I liked, Mark Hamill as an actor, like, I was like, I don't know if I could have seen him playing that. It would have been weird to me, even though he might have done a serviceable job. Now, I personally, and that person's point was well taken. Okay, he played on Broadway, but you cannot playing on Broadway and in front of a camera, very, very, very different. In theater, you're taught to project to the back of the room. Your voice, all your gestures, all your facial expressions, everything is done so that the room full of people, the theater full of people can hear and see you. It's very big and, for lack of a better term, theatrical. Larger than life. And I think that does work. That translates very well to voice acting, because a lot of times I've found, you know, I'll do like a voiceover thing, and I'll think it's fine, but then I realize without any facial expressions or without any of the visual stuff, you really need to punch up the voice a bit. I mean, you don't want to be like, whoa, my gosh, that's so crazy. But you kind of have to give the voice a lot more energy, because there's really nothing else by itself that's communicating that, especially if you're just narrating over a video that, you know, where it's not going to be like it's an animated character or something like that, where they're going to be bringing the visuals to the voice. I think we might find, I'm not 100% sure, but I think we'd find that a lot of the time there's a lot more range and a lot more emoting in voiceovers than there is in regular camera work. I mean, obviously, the voice is always a tool. It's always something that you're trying to use in the craft and sculpt. But if you give it too much, if you overdo it a little bit when you're in combination with your acting, it can seem saccharine or overdone or over dramatized or stilted even. All that to say, I remember watching, you know, Star Wars as a kid and thinking Mark Hamill was a great actor. He was a great Luke. And I was basing that on things like when he's writhing, when he's getting struck by lightning, you know, the Emperor's Force lightning. I think I've talked about this in another video, so I don't want to go too far into it. But, you know, I was like, okay, that's you know, that was really good. To be able to act, you know, you're in a quiet sound stage. There's no. I mean, there's some lights. I think they were probably flickering some lights to, you know, to imitate how the lightning would be. The light from the lightning would be interacting with his body and in the room, but like there's no obviously the actual visuals aren't there. There's no sound effects or anything. Like you just literally have Ian McDiarmid just sitting there doing this like that Luke can't even see because his eyes are closed, and he's just writhing on the floor. That takes some chops to imagine that and to do it in a way that actually looks like. I mean, he jerked. He was doing all this stuff. I don't know how that compares to how it is when people really get electrocuted. I think it's far less. I think when people get electrocuted for real, it's far less visual, but obviously, like, your body is burning. But like, I don't think there's as much, you know, movement necessarily. There may be some, but not. I don't think as much. But anyway, I thought it was good. But you know, but my parents, they're like, he's okay, you know, he's all right. But now that I've gotten older, I would see the same thing. And also, if somebody would say, you know, well, yeah, he was great. He does great voiceover work, and you know, he was on Broadway. I mean, you have to have some skill to do that. You have to have some ability, some talent. Despite the fact there was a commenter that actually said he didn't believe there was such a thing as talent. I'm like, that's asinine. I mean, you can call it something else if you want to, gifting or I don't even know. But there, I mean, you've got people that can play concertos, or I'm probably using that term wrong. They can play concerts at the age of 3. They can put compositions together at the age of 3. They can just do crazy things at a young age, and we call them prodigies, but it's talent. Like, that's just a crazy amount of talent that requires, like, it's like they've been doing it for years already. And there's no other word for that. That's not something they do. That's not practice. They haven't lived long enough to practice long enough to get that good at something that somebody who's even average at music would be able to do. So anyway, where was I going with all of that? Got off on so many tangents. Oh, the acting. Yeah, but there's this difference between acting for theater and screen. So I can believe that. You know, he could have been serviceable on stage, but still not the greatest of actors on screen. And I could be way off on that. Because I haven't seen a ton of things that he was in. I remember watching some outtakes and seeing some clips of him in other movies, and I'm like, kind of, sort of, okay. But regardless, the point being, even then, even with an actor that I liked at the time, or thought was incredibly talented, I still couldn't imagine him in that role. Like, and especially, and it certainly doesn't help because he was Luke Skywalker. But at the same time, Harrison Ford was Indiana Jones and Han Solo, and yet, I mean, I wouldn't call him a chameleon, but was in plenty of other movies, Air Force One. He was the original Jack Ryan, I think. He was, Clear and Present Danger or something, like 2 or 3 of those kind of movies. The Fugitive. Was he? No. Tommy Lee Jones was in U.S. Marshal. Anyway. Oh, we beat the Tubby Bird. Yay. But it's just hard to, I guess my whole point is I think it's very difficult no matter how well liked or how awesome you think another actor is or another person or another version, that the original version, the one that you become familiar with, is always going to seem like the right one. And why was that important? Why were we talking about that? What was the context? Don't remember. I was hoping it would kind of waft back to me, because last I remember I was talking about isometric views and liking tight controls. We talked about Castlevania and how, a good chunk of the difficulty was in the controls. And they weren't trying to make it realistic necessarily, because there's plenty of stuff that isn't realistic in it. And that's when I derailed. That's where I got off on a tangent of some kind. But going back to that, okay, yeah, not being able to change the direction in the air of your, not be able to change the direction of your jump while in the air is very real to life. Nobody, not even Michael Jordan, not anybody, nobody, no matter how talented anybody is, yet we have not been able to find somebody who can actually shift in direction while they're jumping. I can't jump forward and then pull myself back and land. Like, once the momentum's going, you're done. And so that's accurate, but that's not, I would say Mario kind of established that as, and then I was saying, well, maybe it was because they realized they needed to ramp up the difficulty because there weren't as many levels, or maybe the bad guys were too easy to beat, so they added the knockback and they added these different things to give the game more playability. I don't know. I could see that being a thing because, like I said, Mario had the volume. Mario had more levels, longer levels. That, admittedly, though, he can move through a lot faster. He was no Sonic, but Mario moves with his run speed. Well, heck, his walk speed is probably 50% faster than Belmont's. And then he has his run speed, which is infinitely faster. And Simon Belmont has no, or whoever you're playing, whichever Belmont it is that you're playing in the original Castlevania, he has no speed whatsoever. He has enough abdominal strength to pull his legs up to himself as he's jumping. Like when he jumps, he doesn't just jump, and he jumps, and then when he's in the air, his legs hitch up into like to his body, almost like he's crouching in the air, and then when he lands, it's a cool look. But I'm like, man, you gotta have that's excessive. If you're not able to run, maybe that's why he can't run with it. And he blows his knees out because he jumps like that. And so he has his knees are just shot, and he kind of has to hobble on the way he does in the game. But I don't know. I'm just wondering at what point did that spin off into a tangent about something else altogether? I do know we were then we got into Punch-Out and talked about me losing in that, and then losing in Mega Man, and just having a bad day. And then that went into then. Oh, and then yes, the day, like how crazy it is if you. Okay, we're really discovering it all here, folks. Then the absurdity or the frightening reality of discovering that you have a problem or an issue that the interwebs is not familiar with. And it's like, that's okay. What have I done, or what has gone wrong? Because there should be some chronicling of this issue. And when that's not the case, it's like, oh crap. which was the case for me in that particular area that we eventually did get through. Like I said, there were playthroughs, but there was nothing that said, "Oh, hey, yeah, this is a ridiculous level. You got to hit there's an invisible block. Don't try to grab the green vine. There's an invisible block. Hit that, and makes your life so much easier." And then also, okay, the Sloop John B. So finishing that up, yeah, it was just like I said, it was a very sad song. To me, for so many years, I didn't know about the ship part of it. I just remembered that well, again, in my head, I remembered it as I'm sick and tired and I want to go home. But it's actually like I'm all broke up and I want to go home. But that idea of wanting to just go to a place where you can rest, and just how far you have to have gone as a human, how the things you've had to go through, self-inflicted or not, to bring you to a place where you're like, I'm just done. I just want to lay down and not get up again. You know, I want to go home. I'm done. That's kind of what I think. That's ultimately, to articulate it better. It's not the idea like I want to go to heaven or I want to die. It's I am done. I'm finished with whatever this journey is. And a lot of times we think of life as a journey. So to hear somebody say, I'm done. I want to be done. I want to go home. I'm finished. I think it's a very sad state to be in. And so that song kind of always made me sad. And it makes it quite a bit more poignant because my dad actually, for various reasons that I won't necessarily get into, has really not wanted to live. He doesn't want to die, but he hasn't wanted to live for like 25 or 30 years. And so when I hear that song, it's almost like I'm hearing him, you know, not him singing per se, but that idea. And it does have a somber thing to it. I would put forward that if you did it where it was just somebody singing, like by themselves, like maybe with a violin or something, and you slowed it down, not even half tempo, but just slowed it down, not actually slowing the speed down. Like it would just, if you sang it slower and you use different instruments, I think it would be a tearjerker. I think it would be one of those really like a really sad song. Whereas now it's somber, and because of how I think of it, it makes me sad. I kind of tear up when I'm listening to it. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, because it's a fun song. It sounds good, but it does have that factor to it. And getting around to the point that I was making, I got on there and just said Sloop John B. Makes me sad, or something like that. Colon makes me sad. And hey, I was able to find, now granted it was only one, but I was able to find a Reddit post where somebody said, you know, is it just me, or do you tear up? Am I the only one who like tears up or you know, gets misty when I hear that song? I don't know what it is, but there's something about it does it. And there were a few people, like, fortunately, I mean, it's Reddit, so you're expecting to get all kinds of comments. I wasn't paying attention on that one. About it, but no, I mean, the closest thing you got was, I mean, yeah, somebody was like, well, no, it's not exactly a happy song. And I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But so I left my comment. I think I've commented like twice on Reddit, or left a post on Reddit twice. I don't typically like to engage in discourse on that platform. And it just usually the percentage, the likelihood of it being devolved into some kind of argument or name calling or whatever is much higher. Unless you find the Reddit that's like, hey, trying to change the oil on a whatever car, you know, and I can't find the part, or I don't know how to get to it, or something like that, where it's more like how to do something. And even then you'll have somebody say, well, if you can't change the oil in your car, then you need help. Like, there's always going to be a jerk that gets in there. It feels like their contribution to the conversation is going to be to try to demean or insult that person. But most of the time you'll get other people that will get on there and actually provide some help. But in general, and things like that, you know, anytime you get to emotional stuff or whatever, you're usually I think you're just as likely to get turd muffins as you are somebody going, oh yeah, totally, I get that, or yeah, I've always thought that too, or, you know, people that share the common ground. People are more likely, but I felt compelled to do it because I was there looking for somebody else to say that, or hoping that was something that somebody else experienced. And fortunately, I was able to find, well, that was only one though. Like, I remember I went there, I saw that, I was like, oh cool, I left my little post, and then I started scrolling down and I didn't find another thing about it. There was nothing else about it. Like nobody else expressed that. There was no YouTube video on it. Usually there's a YouTube video on everything, you know. It's like why this song means so much to me, why this song broke my heart, or whatever. But there wasn't one. So that close to that being a unique experience, at least to me, apparently. Whereas, you know, when I watched a clip of Where the Red Fern Grows and saw there's like the last 10 minutes or so, and I remember watching it in elementary school. It tore me up back then. Luckily, when I kind of glanced around, it was hitting everybody else, including the teacher, pretty darn hard. So, you know, all of us were more focused on trying to keep ourselves from just completely like breaking down. We were so much concerned about other people. But even as an adult, I was kind of expecting to be like, oh, get that nostalgia, be like, oh man, I remember that now. And I was like, oh yeah, that was kind of sad. But no, it grabs you again. It got me pretty much the exact same way. It's like, wow. And it's kind of the same thing as the first one. It's not just, so for those of you who don't know, Where the Red Fern Grows it was based on a novel. And the idea is, and I don't remember the full background on it, but the idea is that a red fern it's not something you plant somewhere. A red fern will grow like on the grave of a warrior or somebody who sacrificed or did something. I don't know if that's Native American in origin, if it was just made up for the book or what, but the idea that I think in the beginning of the book there is this lore established that when someone, when there's a grave of somebody who's a warrior or again, does something selfless or noble, that a red fern grows up amongst them. I feel like I've said this before, but bear with me if it has. But the whole book is about, this young boy who saves up and buys these two hunting dogs, little Dan and little Ann, brother and sister, as you would kind of assume based on the setup there. And they have adventures together and they grow up together. And like I said, the kid he worked his butt off for like, I don't know, 2 summers or a year or something like that in order to be able to buy these. So they meant a lot to him. He wanted them very badly. Loved them. They did a lot together, but at the very end, I believe it's a bear or a bobcat. I think it's a bobcat, or not a bobcat. Bobcats are small, like a mountain lion. A predator of some kind that they run into in the woods, and the dogs protect him. And one of them, they both I think they both get injured, but one of them gets mortally wounded and dies. I think it's little Dan. I think little Dan passes away. And so they bury him, and they're all everybody's very sad. It's sad in general, but then the narrator's talking that but little Ann just seemed to give up. Just didn't want to go on without her brother. And so there's it's a shot of her lying like next to the grave, just all sad looking and everything. I don't know what you have to do. Obviously the dog probably wasn't thinking anything, wasn't trying to channel any sadness, but however they coached the dog, whatever the animal trainers did, made her look really depressed and dejected and just so sad. And she was kind of curled up next to her buried brother, just a little mound of dirt that was there. And that's kind of what gets you, is because when I remembered I thought they both died, which is still very sad, but it's even more so when you just see just the losing the will to live. So this dog is just in such grief because she lost her brother, that she just lays there, and eventually he goes out. Like he would bring her food and stuff like that, but she wouldn't move, she wouldn't eat. And he goes out one day and she's passed away as well, just from grief. And so she gets buried next to her brother, and so there's these 2 mounds of dirt. And right before the family's going to move, I think it's like a year later, and the family's going to move, and they kind of have recovered a little bit, and the young man is kind of recovered and said, okay, I need to move on with my life. And they're about to move away. He goes back to visit the grave one last time, and there between the two mounds is a red fern. And so you got the grief of the dogs passing, then you've got the added anguish of watching one of them, of one dog dying. That's sad enough. Then you have the grief of watching another dog just give up on life, is so stricken by grief and that loss that she can't do anything. She just lays there, next to him, or his remains, I guess, or the marker for where she knows he is. Doesn't maybe know why he's down there and doesn't do anything, but he just knowing that he's no longer with her, and that grief is enough for her to pass away. And then have the best that I can think when I try to think why it means something is the idea that there's some larger than our experience, whether God or nature or whatever. There's something out there that is able to perceive like something like self-sacrifice or of courage or whatever it is, that there's something there that even if nobody sees it, there's something out there that can perceive that. And so that red fern is kind of like the endorsement of whatever this mystical, otherworldly type consciousness kind of awards this honor because it knows, and so it's there are people that I've talked about, whether it's something good like a sacrifice, like a lot of people they get kind of choked up if that's part of when somebody dies that we know, and we know very well and we love. Part of our grief is that not only is this person no longer in the world, they're no longer with them, but the idea that you want to be able to communicate what that person meant to you and what that person did, and there's really no way to communicate that. Like if you lost a loved one as well, you can understand that feeling, but the world is, strangers, even people that if you can communicate as much as you want, you're still not able to impart that person's spirit, that person's generosity, that person's goodness, how much sacrifice that person made. And a lot of us, we're like, there's some people there, you get the autobiographies and biographies, and of course those are, how much of those are real, how much of those are doctored up. But for most of us, we're not going to have much behind when we're gone. There's not going to be anything that you're going to be able to see or read about that says it. It's going to be somebody's personal photo albums and their stories. And a lot of times those last a generation or two, and then they're lost. And I don't think that part is particularly sad, because once you're gone, like, whether you think there's an afterlife or not, once we're gone from here, we probably aren't too concerned about it. Whether because we just cease to exist altogether, or because we're in a completely different place, we're living life on a different level, and we're not looking back on, oh man, I remember those days. Like, we got a whole new adventure waiting for us. Or like I said, or there's nothing, and either way, you're not thinking about it. So the idea of like a legacy, where it's important for the world to remember me, but not so much me, but like loved ones. Like I think we all have somebody, a friend or a dog, a pet, somebody that, or something that meant so much to us. And when it passes away, it's the sadness that, it feels like all of that is going to be forgotten, or all of that is not going to be remembered. It should be commemorated. It should be honored. It should be, uplifted in the same way that, when we read about these stories. Like, I remember getting a little bit choked up, not terribly, but I remember getting a little misty just like reading the appendices in Lord of the Rings, in Return of the King. Because, Return of the King, everybody's alive. I mean, Frodo goes to the Undying Lands with Gandalf and Bilbo, but like, we know he's not like dying as they sail. Like, he's going to a place, I think. He can go there and they rest, they recover, they whatever. They're still in the mortal plane, but then they still die at some point, and their spirit will go on to wherever it is that the mortal spirits go. But so there's a parting of ways, and there's a grief in that, but it's not, there's like not a death thing. But you read the appendices, and it tells you what happens. It tells you what happens to Sam. It tells you what happens to Merry and Pippin and Aragorn and Éowyn, and it obviously it ultimately culminates. None of them have, as I recall, a tragic death, but it just their life expires. And so that idea, that knowledge that in the world that Tolkien created, these characters do pass away, and while their deeds may live on in the book and in the legacy and the lore, as we can attest to in our own history, like there are some, I'm sure there are some amazing people that did amazing things that we have no idea about. they didn't make it into the history books, or I mean, perhaps even worse, they did, but their name has been besmirched. You know, that their efforts or what they did have been minimized or have been marginalized or given the credit given to somebody else, or even if they haven't, it's just you still don't really have, like, if you know the person, let's just like the person who invented the TV. Let's just say I don't know. Like most things, I would imagine it was invented in stages, whereas like the very first type of TV, you know, had no sound, had very basic picture, but it was proving out the tube thing was, you know, CRT is the something tube, carbon nanotube, or not CNT. I don't know. Anyway, but you know, it's like it comes in stages. So you develop this, and then somebody else comes along and they add on to it, and then somebody else adds this, and like movies, you know, you had silent movies for a long time, and then somebody figured out how to create a soundtrack, and then that was the next step, and it was like music, and then you were able to create, you know, different things. So you don't really have whoever was that created technically the first camera, the first movie. It was so far removed from what we have now. You're like, okay, well, that person made the first step, which is important. Obviously, you have to build on that. But even if you had, like, just say you had somebody that created the first TV, the first camera, the first computer, and you know, we know that there were. But that was, I mean, computers are another thing. Like the computer that was the size of a large room and used punch cards and did very basic, like, calculator level calculations. You don't think of that as the computer that we use here. It was a necessary step in getting where we got. You can't get where we're going without that first, second, third, fourth step, and everything moves in progression. But we don't have like the quote unquote father of or mother of computers. You know, somebody who really brought it. I mean, yeah, Bill Gates, you know, brought an operating system, but the operating system is worthless without everything underneath it. He brought a user-friendly interface, but without the brains of the computer and all the other stuff done there, the interfaces and things. But that's a big step. But you know, you have people that contributed to things, but even if you had somebody who really just said, "Bam, here's the first laptop or the first computer," and it was pretty much just a bigger, slightly less sexy version of a regular computer without a screen or something, and you go, but that's it. That was all the stuff. That was the binary code. That was the first program ran. Like, so, even if you had one person that did all that, you know, you could have, you know, you have a blurb in a textbook. It's like a paragraph long. Hey, this guy lived and he did this thing, and isn't that awesome? You still don't know. It doesn't encompass his struggles. That's why I liked. There was a movie. It had the guy that played Jack from Three's Company. He played the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz. And it's another sad movie where he passes away of cancer or something. But it goes into his life and how difficult it was, you know, as he was writing this, the hurdles that he had in his personal life and the creative process. And so it wasn't just, oh, here's the guy who wrote the story we all like. It's here's how much he had to go through in order to get that story out. And I think that's what we miss. Even when somebody says, oh, hey, this is what this person accomplished. It's like, okay, that's awesome. We can say thank you so much for the contribution, but that's not what we grieve when we think about loved ones or people that mean, or animals even that mean something to us. It's not that accomplishment. It's what we know that they did, or the decisions they made, the selflessness that they embodied, and the struggle that they just continue to persevere through in order to get that end product. That's the part that we want people to know about, and that's the part that a lot of times you don't get to. That's why I find behind the scenes in movies to be, or had for a long time, felt those to be so compelling, because like, okay, yeah, the movies one thing, that's great, but I'm interested, at least at the time, particularly as a filmmaker of sorts, you know, I use that term loosely for myself, but somebody who knows how difficult it can be, I should say, somebody who knows a fraction of what the challenges are on a very small level, and just imagining them on a bigger scale, and the pressure and all of that, all the dynamics involved in that. It's interesting to me to see like what the actors went through, what the, you know, how the director had to persevere to keep his vision, you know, despite all the pressure he was getting to fudge things or change things or move the pacing along. and just everything that people had to overcome. And a lot of times it all culminates in a really beautiful story of a lot of people going through struggles. It's very rare that you have like everything was hunky-dory on set. We just kind of moved through, production moved smoothly, or you know, at the very least, yeah, it was just a mechanical thing. It was a just a basic filmmaking issue. Like, oh yeah, I mean, this would be a big deal, but we lost the film for that day. We shot one of the most intense scenes that had some of the best acting, and it's lost to the ages because it was exposed too early or in the incorrect way. So it is a so I mean, there's that, but on a personal level, what people have to go through. I just happened to see there was a behind the scenes. I thought I'd watched it all. At least I have from the Blu-rays, but apparently there's even more stuff that I hadn't seen or I've forgotten by now. And it's, you know, Sean Astin, like, they're watching him, like, walking very tenderly. There's that scene at the end of Fellowship where Frodo is on the boat and he's like, you know, I'm going, Sam. He's like, oh, yeah, yes. He's like, I'm going alone, Sam. He's like, yes, you are, Mr. Frodo, but I'm coming with you, and I'm coming with you. And he's kind of wading through the water. And I remember, even when I was younger, when I'd see scenes like that, at first, when I was very, very young, I just assumed that, like, they went down and put boards, you know, on the bottom of on the lake or you know, something to make sure that the actor wasn't going to stick. Because I've walked on, you know, there was a Montclair Lake where I used to live, and there was all kinds of stuff you could step in or step on. It was either gooey or icky, or sometimes the rocks were kind of jagged or whatever. So it was like, in order to have an actor do that, or you see, you know, an actor running down the street either barefoot or even with like just certain shoes on, and you're going, okay, they must have made sure the street was completely clear of all obstacles. And you know, and in that scene in particular with Sam, I thought, okay, I didn't, but I would have, as a younger person, thought, well, they went through and somebody went around and moved all the rocks from where he needed to walk so that he wasn't going to step on anything. And that's not the reality. The reality is they do mitigate risk as best as they can, and they do more so for actors. I mean, we've seen in many different instances actors getting preferential treatment and treated because even though they're not the most important part, they are the least replaceable. Especially if you're like halfway through the production. I think we're going to be running out of... I think we're at the end here. So, yeah, thanks for watching. And we'll let this expire, but